Okay, fine. In this section, we'll continue with the NAT. Like we discussed in the previous example, we discussed something called static NAT, where you can translate one private IP address with the one public IP address. But the major drawback with the static NAT is we need to do one-to-one mapping, and also it has to be done manually. So we'll be using dynamic NAT here as well. And this dynamic NAT will be implementing and verifying it. So in case of dynamic NAT, we can still translate a private IP to public IP, but the mapping, no need to do it manually. So we can do the automatic mapping. So let's take an example. I have a scenario where I want to translate the complete 192.168.1 network. Assume that I got 200 private IP addresses within this range, and I want this all should get translated to some public IP 5111 and up to 511200, and all are using the slash value of subnet mask. And I'm doing some 200 translations here, and I want to ensure that all these users, so I'm using dynamic NAT here. In case of dynamic NAT, I want my 192.168.1 network with /24 subnet mask should get translated to a public IP 5111 to 511200. So this is the range of the private IP, and this is the range of the public IP what I am using for translation. And the mapping is done automatically. So how we can do this? Now for this we need to go with the syntax. We are going to write the statements in the 3 lines. In the first statement, I'm going to use an access list, standard ACL, which is going to match the source address and which is going to match the private IP addresses. So inside the ACL, any number it can be, let's say I'm using 55 in this scenario. In the ACL 55, we are going to define what are the private addresses we want to use. And I'm going to write an ACL statement saying that access list 55 permit 192.168.1 network. So in this, I'm defining that anything starting with 192.168.1, these are all my private IP addresses. We are going to define them, and it is identified with the ACL number of 55. So probably in the next statement, we need to write what are the public IP addresses we want to use and what is the starting IP and the ending IP. And that will be decided by using some pool name. We are going to write a name called pool name, where I'm going to say that IPNAT pool, any name it can be, like I'm using CCNA here. And we need to write the starting public IP in the range 5111, and to write the ending public IP. In my scenario, it is 511200, and then the net mask as it is, and the subnet mask whatever we are using. So in my scenario, I'm using /24 subnet mask. Now, based on these 2 scenarios, we can see that there is an ACL 55 which is going to identify all your private networks, and there is a pool name called CCNA which is defining all the public IP addresses with some pool name. Now in the last statement, we need to map this private IP to the public IP, and that is what we are doing in the third statement here. We are going to say IPNAT inside source list, and we are going to write the ACL number saying that whatever the private addresses are defined in the ACL 2055, it should get translated with whatever the public IP addresses I have defined in the pool name called CCNA. So I'm going to say that translate these private IPs to this public IP, where it is going to do the translation automatically. So we are just going to write a 3-line statement where we are going to define what is the private IP range by using an ACL, public IP range by using a pool name, and then mapping of that private IP to public IP in the third statement. And the final step implementation is going to be same. So we just need to tell the interface connecting in the LAN is my inside interface, and the interface connecting to the ISP is my outside interface. So that's it. So that's how we can verify the dynamic NAT. If you want to implement the lab here, you can simply continue with the same configuration what we did in the previous lab. The only thing is you need to remove the NAT configurations whatever you did in the previous statements. Like I can remove copy paste, and then I can remove that second statement as well, and then I can remove the third statement, and I can remove the for statement as well. So once you add no before that any statements, it automatically removes the previous static NAT configurations. And I want to use dynamic NAT, and I can say access list 55 permit 192.168.1.network 0.0.0.255, and then access list, not access list again, IP NAT pool, and the name of the pool CCNA, and then we need to write the starting public IP is 51.1.1, and then we can write 51.1.200, and then we can write the subnet mask. So I'm not writing all these things, so I want you to verify this lab, but practically we don't use this in the production networks because it's again one-to-one mapping which has to be done manually by the administrator. So probably this lab I want you to verify again, but I'll be showing you the next lab where we'll be using something called port address translation, where we translate with only one registered IP.